business, to overcome any challenges it faces, it will need to develop a sustainable business practice. For KFC to survive in China, it will need to focus on this factor, sustainability. A very good afternoon to you all and a warm welcome. My name is Porn Promote. Here are my colleagues, Panjira, Pirda, and Akaporn. We're Inspired Consulting from Chulalongkorn University. Today, we'll tell you how KFC can overcome the challenges it faces, but more importantly, achieve its goal of securing a reliable and also a sustainable supply chain. But with doing so, it will need to achieve the objective of regaining customer trust, creating a sustained supply chain, and also improving financial performance. And by the end of this presentation, we promise not only that will we achieve this goal we've set forth, but also doing so, achieving a revenue of 9.3 billion USD. So when I say the word sustainability, we need to look at the core model of sustainable business practice. And at the core, there are three factors, which are economy, social, and also environmental. Allow me to explain each. The first, economic, pretty much deals with the profit and also shareholder value. But the latter two, social and environmental, focuses on the societal factors of the society and also the environmental factors. And in this case, are the consumers and suppliers respectively. So then, thank you. So then let's look at the core competencies of KFC China and how we can use this to leverage into achieving our goal we've stated earlier. So as you can see here, it has deep understanding of the market, as evidenced when it first entered China in its decision to localize, because it understands the market very well. Couple that with the fact that it can connect to the consumers on a high number of channels and level, it is really key into translating the message of a sustainable practice to the consumers. So then, let's look at the issues we've set forth for today. The first, it's the supply chain. Currently, KFC focuses a lot and also has a lot of initiatives taking focus at the end stream supply chain, which are the storefront and also the consumers. For example, it's I Commit campaign and also all the banners it puts in the store. But what we really believe is the key for the company to fix this problem is the root cause, which is the upstream supply chain, which is really causes all the problem in terms of consumer distrust and also the fact of the quality of the chicken that supplies KFC. And then second, we need to look at the declining performance. As you can see here, the sale of same store has been declining and also has not reached a positive in over a year. This is mainly due to the scandal that has recently been surfaced and also the diseases of the chicken, such as bird flu. And we will need to fix this problem. The only way we can do that is to regaining consumers' trust and to really to get them to trust us so they are able to buy our products again. I'll now hand it off over to my colleague to summarize and also introduce to you our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Porn Promote. So now, as we just summarized the two main issues to you, we want to reintroduce the main objective again. We want to make sure that we create sustainable business practice so that when we face obstacles the next time, we'll be able to quickly regain trust from people and rise above the challenge effectively and efficiently. And we think when KFC pledged to be the company that's so good, we present to you the two good strategies. Firstly, they need to care for the environment around them and create operations that make them feel good about themselves and make them feel good about the supply. And secondly, once that operations and investment is done, they need to translate that investment into the profits and generate revenues through making customers know that KFC do good. So these are the two main strategies that Inspired Consulting will focus on today in order to create sustainable business practice. So firstly, let's start off with the first questions of how do we deal with the main objectives overall. We think currently right now we see issues, as we mentioned earlier, the scandals, outbreaks of the supplies contaminations, and then there's also diseases like SARS that we see every day. And right now we think KFC have developed a short-term problem to deal with this, where they said that they want to, they use social media ads, and at the same time they use I commit web pledge to pledge that they want to do good, they create new quality control. But we think these problems is actually answering things from the KFC perspective. We have yet incorporated other factors that causes the changes in or the bad business practice. So we think this impact will alleviate a problem only in the short term. The only way to create a long run perspective of protection is to incorporate all the important stakeholders and make sure that we generate good practice from all levels above. So now let's take a look at how do we really do that in our strategies to make sure that we feel good about operations and to make sure that our suppliers also do the same. There are two main questions I'll answer here. Firstly, what do we do with supply chain? Do we focus locally or do we import? And at the same time, if we focus locally, who do we focus on and where do we get our supply from? Once that question is done, we'll talk about how do we really ensure good practice. So first, let's dive in on how do we really create good practice. The questions between locals and imports. So the reason why we would rather focus with local suppliers is mainly because one, we'll have more interest of the local stakeholders, so we'll be able to leverage future. But at the same time, we think sometimes the local could cost less and be economical. And at the same time, imports doesn't always mean it's good qualities. Imports sometimes could mean that it's no longer fresh and no longer at good qualities. I would be more willing to discuss this in the Q&A sessions. But what would be our focus? So our focus, when we focus on local products, there are two main focus here. Firstly, we'll focus on our processors and our suppliers. And secondly, we'll dive into the supply itself. How do we really enhance qualities? So let's start with the processors. What do we do? When we talk about processors right now, there are few options at hand on where do we get our supplies from. We could get it from big processors, or we could build our own farms, or we at the same time could bring in other players from overseas to start business in China. But we think the best operations is to look at the current performing processors in China so that we will leverage the local knowledge, and at the same time we'll be able to incorporate locals in. And we don't think KFC right now would want to expand operations into building their own farms, because that's not what KFC do best. We are companies that we do best at serving good chicken, and we would rather focus on serving good dishes to people. So that's why we want to focus on local suppliers. Another question is, who in local suppliers do we want to take a look at? There are interesting new trends that we see in China. Right now, the new farming practice in China, that they start to form cooperatives. And these cooperatives, when they form together, they gain economies of scale. They have extra capital that they could invest to create more quality control and create more superior supplies. And that's why we think cooperatives in this case would be the best solutions. And at the same time, when we have the local Chinese, we think when we play it right, and if we play it right, we'll be able to leverage on this and create local trust as well. So that's why we would like to partner with cooperatives. But now let's really think why these cooperatives was actually answered to us, and why would they buy into our products? Why would they buy into our practice? Why would they buy into our practice? We think there are a few main reasons. One, KFC in fact has a pretty strong demand that will generate a sustainable and constant demand for these suppliers, so they'll be interested in a good sales. But at the same time, will actually give them a better price because of the good quality that they ensure us. And most importantly, there are potential business know-how transfer in the future. If KFC in other countries, we have good control over the quality of the chicken, we could transfer the control and tell them what would be the good way to control chicken from other countries to here. So we think there's a few things up with KFC that we could leverage, and that's why the cooperative would agree with us. So now that we're done with the cooperative part of the processors and the suppliers, let's take a look at what would be the impact. The impact now that we'll incorporate local people, that we will bring in locals into part of our operations, and now because KFC itself is a big corporation, we have a little bit of bargaining power that we can pressure these people to enhance their qualities, and that means we can improve qualities of our supplies and gain a little bit more trust. But secondly, I promised you earlier, we'll talk a little bit more about supply on how can we really ensure good supply. Let's talk about supply then. So how do we really ensure good supplies? When we talk about supplies in this case, there are a few things that we could do. There are a few insights I need to mention to you first. Actually, first of all, there are certain institutes right now in China, a local independent organizations who goes to farm and evaluates on quality of the chicken. The only problem that we had right now is, previously, they did not inform to the authority when they see problem. So it's imperative for KFC to actually continue these practices, but then it's equally important for them to actually add on the contract that, just like how normal auditors would work, if they find a problem with chicken, firstly they'll inform KFC, but if KFC refuses to follow, then they have a right and responsibility to inform it to the right authority of the public. And we think this is something that works in auditor, and it could be a model that we adapted a little more to apply in this case. But more importantly, why do we think this would work? We think the mentality of KFC has changed. KFC has learned that lesson. It's not good to conceal information. It's equally important to pass on the knowledge to customers when they see problems. But at the same time, this will allow them to leverage on trust. If they put them on, for example, in the CSR report, this will allow the company itself to enhance values in terms of CSR report and investors. And this is another level of check and balance. So we're not just providing check and balance from KFC levels of controlling supply chain, we will also provide a double lock system that's also independent persons to come in, inspect, and report to the public, which we think is a possible solution to ensure qualities of the product. So now with that impact, we're able to regain trust from customers and most importantly, create a sustainable supply chain. So with my strategy I mentioned so far, we have dealt with the environmental impact of our strategy to incorporate suppliers to create sustainable practice. Now my partner is going to come up here and talk about how do we really translate that into revenues and how do we really capture and capitalize from our investments.
So thank you, Chulalongkorn. So what we have to do here in order to increase revenue as well as to increase the awareness that KFC has changed. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have the options of the point of sales, and second of all is the social media. The reason that we did not choose to do the printed ads as well as the normal ads because we have insight that's in regional of China. There are different type of media outlets that they have, and not only that, there are different types of target reach as well as that it has been ignored from the previous advertisement that it has. So these are the main criteria that we had to put in order to ensure that there will be increase of an awareness as well as that it will translate into our revenue. First thing we have to have is that how do we have to ensure that there's an instant increase of awareness, and not only that is that the media can be broadcasted many times, and last but not least the high reach as well as it is very cost effective for KFC. So now let's step into the first one, which is the point of sales. So this we can see is that with the next slide please. So this we can ensure that the first thing what we have to do is that we have to look at what consumers at stores are currently doing. So now they have to have a reassured check on the quality of the KFC that provide to them. And not only that, we'll have to provide the local touches. In this sense, we mean the local company that we ensure that will help the economy, as well as that what we want to do is that it's very important to understand the consumers of what their needs and wants are, because this it will ensure that we'll be able to sell the products of them. So how do we do it remains the question. The first thing that we have to do is that we will provide a quality stamp. But this quality stamp will ensure that the cooperation between the suppliers and us as KFC will help them to put on the packages of the product that we use quality control ingredients. Not only that, we believe that by leveraging on the supply chain management, as well as that we understand what the customer needs are and the local trust that we can gain through the quality of the stamps, it will ensure that consumers will believe that our products are of quality. The second thing that we would like to do is the quality QC code. With this QC code, we have been looking at the case studies from McDonald's, such as the QC that which consumers can scan the barcode and see what are the source of ingredients of the location where they're from. So with this source of location of ingredients, it'll help them make sure that the ingredients of support quality and the control and the quality is ensured. And not only that, we believe that it will help to ensure the transparency of the quality control. And not only that, we believe that this is a step to take into further for KFC as they have done the Operation Thunder. Now let's take a look at what KFC does. So for this, what we have to know is that in consumers, people are not confident, and then there's no visual for them to see of what KFC has currently changed to ensure that the confidence of the trust of the people. So what we have to do is the visual videos, as well as what we have to do is to go through the social media of Weibo and Ren, so that will ensure that the social clip of the short video would help the message to ensure that we have changed around. And not only that, the posters that were offered before were not effective because they were not visual. And not only that, we believe that we will help to create the trust, and it will help for the company to look good that it has done justification in change of what the quality check are, as well as ensure customer trust. Moving on, the impact of this strategy is that with KFC, it will help allow for them, as we believe that we help to increase the consumer confidence. It will help to create new sustainable focus. And not only that, this will turn into increase in sales. With the users, we believe that we'll help to ensure them the reassurance of that the quality of the food is in control and of support quality. And not only that, because of this social integration, it will help boost the customers' confidence. And last but not least is the supplier of the QC stamp that we believe that they will gain a name for themselves. And not only that, it's an advocate on cost, as they will be the local one who will be helping on the local economy and will create income for them. So now let my partner, Kwanchira, to pass on the financial justification.
Thank you, Pirata. So here we have the implementation timeline. As you can see, for our first strategy, what do we need to do? First of all, we need to contact the suppliers, as well as conducting training program and hiring the independent checkers. For our second strategy, we need to do market research and gain consumer insights, as well as preparing for the shooting of video for promoting campaigns. Next, moving on to our financial justification. Here we have the revenue drivers and the cost driver. So the main revenue drivers will be from the increase in number of customers as a result from the better perception of quality, as well as more efficient supply chain management. For the cost driver, it will be mainly from R&D as well as quality control, because we need to hire independent QC check as well as an institution. There will also be a cost driver from marketing and advertisement, and the trace and track, because we'll be implementing the QR code. Next, please. So, as you can see, we would like to have financial numbers for KFC in China. However, due to limited information, we will be discussing the trends of each element. So first of all, the revenue is expected to increase. And for the cost of goods sold and the other operating costs is expected to increase more than the inflation rate due to the rise in the cost of raw materials. So as a result, the net income would increase at an increasing rate. Next, please. So here we have the revenue for Yum from China division. So we expected that the revenue growth would be about 5% in the first year, and about 8% after that, which will be slightly higher than the GDP growth rate. And so here in conclusion, let's look back at what we have achieved so far. With the objective of regaining customer trust, creating sustainable supply chain, as well as improving financial performance, our strategy, Feel Good and Do Good, will be able to solve the issue of declining performance, as well as the supply chain management, and achieve the revenue target of about 9.3 billion and having a sustainable supply chain. So now KFC will be able to become a company that incorporates consumer trust as well as efficient operations. Thank you for your attention. So now the floor is open for Q&A.
Thank you very much. So now we'll have a 15-minute Q&A. Go ahead.
talk to me a little bit about costs? So I see you have your revenues projected on a growth rate. In terms of the costs, I saw your graph that grows at a steady rate. Do you think it'll be, first of all, there'll be any implementation costs which are perhaps from a steady basis, be front-end loaded, something to do now, while we put in that interaction all the progress you had on your progress chart? And the second question was whether you think you might end up paying more as a consequence for your chicken going forwards, and whether in fact you should pay more for your chicken going forwards, and whether the incentivisation of farmers is an important part of ensuring that they also buy into your sustainability argument.
Okay, so just a quick recap. The first question is, what's the correlation between the cost and the revenue? And you want us to explain a little bit more on the cost?
It's always all about costs.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
what are the sort of fixed costs that might be now in terms of front-end load as opposed to a steady progression as you have on your chart. If we're going to do a root and branch, look at our suppliers, is there a cost that's going to be perhaps more year 1 than year 5? But also connect that on the longer term. I wondered if you'd thought about overall whether you should be paying more for your chicken, what you think in terms of the economics of your suppliers, whether that is important if you are to build a sustainability model.
So thank you for the question. So we believe here we have the cost is benchmarked from the inflation rate, and we expected that the cost will be a little bit higher than the inflation rate due to the rising cost of materials. And for the
Actually, to answer the second question regarding the impact to the revenues and would it be more like a a worthwhile investment? First of all, we think that that should be a good enough investment given that one, we recognize the cost as an additional premium price that we'll pay for the cost of goods sold, but at the same time what we expect to see is actually that other costs, there should not be a significant investment if you take a look at the overall strategies. The impact that we're pretty much remaining the same operation, we just uplift the standard a little more. So for example, the cost of goods sold, we're using the outsourced suppliers at the same time, but we only incur the cost of goods sold. But if we're talking about other OPEX, operational expenditures, we believe that our operation should not incur exceptional additional large investments, because when we talk about, for example, our marketing strategies mainly focus on the low cost strategies that, yes, it would add on a little more on packaging costs when we talk about, for example, the QR codes or the social media costs. But at the same time, we strategically show social medias not just because its reach advantage, it could reach Greater China, but at the same time, we think it's a low cost strategies that we could use the current allocated marketing expense to allocate on that. So there should not be a significant increase in that case. But at the same time, to answer the questions in terms of suppliers, we think, as we mentioned earlier, we think there should be a good incentive for suppliers to be incentivized by us, that one will pay a little bit more premium price, and two, what's good about our strategy is that with these cooperatives that we focus on, we could offer them actually a better supply, as in a better sales, that we promise a constant sales, that when they deal with us, then they will not have to worry about selling to the market or who they're going to sell to, which is the problem of many farmers, right? Many chicken farms right now. So that's what we want to actually deal with. But lastly, to add on a little bit on how this will help company, we think firstly it will definitely help the company in terms of sales when we regain the customer trust, because sales right now, as we mentioned earlier, it's actually dropping because customer has a lot of concerns they have regarding chicken in China. So if we can boost and regain trust from people, we think the sales itself should rebound, actually come back a little more. But additional to that, we're actually taking a project that becomes sustainable projects that will allow the company to use this in the CSR report that should reflect positively on in the stock market, that will allow investors to trust the company a little more. And we believe the company right now is actually taking a lot of initiatives, like for example, KFC in Thailand. There's few stores in Thailand that they only employed the people who cannot hear. So there are stores like that they do. It's not by profit per se, but that's actually a greater impact to the company financials in the long run.
Thank you very much for the presentation. You've done a good job. My question would be, you have done some analysis on using local suppliers versus imports, and you talked a lot about the advantages of using local suppliers. Now my question is, what is the single biggest risk or challenge that you think that using these local suppliers would be, and what's your mitigant to that? Maybe after that one I will ask you the second question.
Okay. So firstly, I would like to mention a little bit about suppliers. I think the biggest risk at the same time should actually be the quality questions, right? That is the quality of the new suppliers that we acquire is actually good. But what we think that we're going to try to create and the overall impact that we want to see is actually when we focus on one big cooperative or we focus on many famous cooperatives, what happened is we'll be able to use their stamps, use their brands or use their cooperatives to actually put it on our products to say that, look, we use product from this, and at the same time, that will allow us to actually ensure quality, it's like a quality stamp to a first level. But secondly, how do we really ensure qualities? Our current our current mechanisms right now is already ensuring quality in many levels. That firstly, we're gonna specifically focus more on the specific suppliers that we have right now, and probably bring know-how that we have in other countries and try to transfer to them. And with them being few suppliers, it's easier to bargain with them, and it's easier to ask them to make sure that they have good qualities. And the research show that these institutes right now, or these cooperatives right now, is actually doing pretty good in terms of qualities. So I think that's a defense that we have right now. But if there's additional quality concern, I think what we need to do as a company is actually, one, make sure that we have stricter policies in terms of supplies, and two, we probably need to get a little bit more influence on the suppliers to make sure that we check every steps of them. But at the same time, when we use the brands of the cooperatives on the products, the consumers themselves would act as another check and balance, not just checking on KFC, but also check on the suppliers, because now they know the name of the products and know the name of the farm that they come from. This is actually something that we do in Thailand. So what happened is many restaurants bring the labels of the chicken suppliers into their restaurants. So customers use this as a quality stamp that, okay, this is Jaran Pokapan chicken, or this is Beta Growth chicken, and they assume or they associate these chickens with the good qualities. So that's why they trust on quality a little bit more. And at the same time, the restaurant can get quality guarantee from the supplier as well. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. My second question is back to your timeline. I think it's in your first last slides. Yes, I've seen that the timeline spans from 2014 to 2018. Now, to me, it seems to be a 5-year period, right? Can you elaborate a little bit more, because there's a crisis that surfaced, and there should be some measures to be put in place in the short term, and some measures to be in the medium term targets. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this timeline? Perhaps a breakdown of the priority of different tasks.
Okay. So basically, for the short term, so we have to first take into measure and steps of that. We have to do market research, because this is very important in order to understand what the customer needs and wants are. And not only that, because as we have implemented the QC code and the quality stamp, what we have to do is we have to contact the suppliers. And not only that, we have to ensure that there's a training program for them right away, that our control and quality check of ingredients are at the level, because right now what KFC lacks is that people are not confident in its ingredients.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we see a question?
Yes,
Time
we still
for
have
question.
almost 6 minutes.
Right. You mentioned about CSR reporting.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
can you elaborate a little bit more? Because a lot of CSR reporting are seen to be self-promoting, so highlighting the things that are doing well. How would you recommend KFC do in their CSR reporting? What to focus and how to make it more useful and relevant to the users?
Okay, that's actually a very interesting question. I think there are a few a little bit the concerns of a CSR report is the question is more like, is it really a good investment? Because right now there's no guarantee or no audit on CSR report, so investors don't really believe in the CSR report by itself. But we think that there's a growing trend that there starts to be CSR audits initiated by PwC corporations. So we think that this is a good assurance that allows CSR reports to improve a little more. But at the same time, the focus for the company, actually I think the best way to focus on CSR report should be focused on all its important stakeholders. Which in this case, for example, we think it's important to take a look at suppliers, which especially in China is a very important stakeholder as it implies whether or not the company is going to do good. So the good qualities will have direct relations with the sales of the company. So I think the extra initiatives that we take regarding the suppliers will allow us to capture the benefits of CSR reports and show a greater impact in the society overall. But the fact that we also incorporate the local community adds a little bit more value. So we don't want just to be another foreign firms to come in and just gain market share, but we want to be we want to be a foreign firms that comes in, think global and act local to try to blend in with the customer a little more. Because we understand that sometimes the sentiments in Chinese consumers that they feel that foreign company is actually not good for the overall Chinese market, or sometimes could hurt the local market. So we think by the fact that we can incorporate local, and the more locals we could integrate in our policies, we'll be able to allow us to gain more awareness and gain more acceptance within the market, and probably will help the sales in the long run as well.
Will you publicize the findings of your independent quality checker? So you're going to hire someone, you say that they're going to report back to the Food Standard Agency, but will you also put their findings on the internet or publish them in any way to the general consumer?
Well, we think first of all, I think the way the auditors work is actually a pretty good way that helps protect the confidential information, but at the same time acts as like a check and balance for the company. We understand that sometimes there are little challenges regarding auditing and how trusted they are, but at the same time, what we want to do is actually we want them to first inform the company and try to get them to change and solve the problem quickly and efficiently. But if they fail to do so, then we think the independent inspectors should have the right to report to the authority, and if they want to, then they could report it to the social media as well. But at the same time, it's probably going to be the same legal responsibility as auditors, that they need to be careful that they're not publicizing sensitive information regarding the company operations. But of course, these independent checks need to be developed a little more to make sure that it becomes a real independent check that acts like a second level of check for the company and the supply.
In your, I think it was your piece actually, you said that when you face the challenge next time there is a food crisis, which I think is a very pragmatic way of looking at it, I think we have to plan for there being a next time. Do you think your consumers will be happy with that level of response, that the quality controller knew, that the Food Standard Agency knew, that your auditors knew for your CSR report, but that they themselves didn't, that they didn't have access as the consumers of your product until the year end or whatever the period is that you report under the formalised structure?
Well, what we think that we want to develop is that the problem with KFC right now is there's no prompt communications. So I think it's equally important for the company to establish more like a contingency team to actually respond firsthand once they see the problem. But at the same time, we think the independent check should make sure that they take into account the timely manner of the issues to make sure that they don't make the consumer wait or make health concerns become something that people have to wait 1 year until they find out the solution. So I think that's a very great point you point out. That's definitely something that the independent check should incorporate in their strategies.
my last question is just that the path we're on seems very much a tightening the control over your existing suppliers, but there's no fundamental change to the plan. So if I was a consumer group and I said, what is the single biggest change you've made of the variety of different things that you've mentioned? What is the single biggest change that you've made which I as a consumer should have confidence in? What would be that?
Incorporate locals community and allow them to share upon the product as well, and that equal to trust.